Hello. A lot of you have written to me about the best way of holding a piece of work for carving, holding the wood. Well, the thing is, there isn't one particular way, and depending on what you want to carve, so you'll have a different way of holding it. And in this sort of group of lessons, I'm going to be talking about the repertoire, the various ways in which I personally hold work. But it begins, all holding work begins actually with the workbench. And a good way of looking at the workbench is, for carvers, is to call it a workstation. And as a professional carver, I actually have about 4. I really only need one, and I'm going to show you my favourite bench here and the various features of it, so that you can adapt your own or even build one to this sort of specification. But before I do, let me show you the bench that I started with. So this is one I made earlier, about 35 years ago. It's made out of pitch pine. It has a surface of 2 foot by 2 foot, and in hindsight that was a little bit small. So I would now think a minimum sort of size would be 3 foot by 2 foot. That gives you room to put your tools on it. You can see at the bottom that it's really weighted down. Now you need to have your bench very heavily secured, either fixed to the floor or weighted with, in this case, bricks in this box here, or gravel or something like that, sand, to give you the weight, because you have a lot of leverage, on the carving as you work. And you can see here we have a carpenter's bench, a carpenter's bench vise. I didn't know how to put one of these on, so I actually put it in the wrong place. The jaws are above the surface. Wasn't very good, but it's good for holding all sorts of things, but not the best use of a carpenter's bench. And you can see also various holes in the bench surface. These are for carver's screws. So this was my first bench. But this is the bench that I use probably more than often, one of these sort of benches here. It's got a different sort of vise. It's got an end vise. This is slung underneath, and it's quite wide, if you notice that. And what it does is allows these bench dogs here in the vise to close towards other dogs in holes in the surface. And in this way you can actually cramp work directly onto the bench surface. So this is really great for relief carving. Additionally, you can use these holes here for all sorts of other purposes, for holding dogs and pups and different ways of gripping without using the vise. Another modification here is that I've got this slot down the middle. This holds a carver's screw that can come up from the middle of the bench, or a clamp, what you call a clamp or a cramp. And these clamps can also be fitted around the outside. So there are lots of different options of holding work on this surface. And the height of the bench traditionally is a lot higher than a carpenter's bench. It's usually a bit below, about a hand's breadth, a few fingers breadth below the elbow when you're standing upright. So that's a good way of measuring. But of course this varies depending on what you're doing. So if you have a tall carving, this bench might be even a bit high. If you have a very low carving, you might still find it a bit low. So what you need to do is be able to adjust the height of the bench. And I do this with blocks of wood underneath here. So that's just a few features of the bench, and you can see that it's very simple. There's no well down the middle. It's a simple bench that you can just use to add things to for holding your work.